Welcome, everyone. I'm Sarah Owen, and for the last decade, I've led the team at the Southwest Florida Community Foundation. But today, I'm so excited to introduce myself as the leader of the team at Collaboratory. I want to just begin for a moment with gratitude for all of you joining us here today. I'm so glad you're here. I'm really excited to say who's here today. Do you know, I just checked the website and we exceeded 1,000 people registered for this event. That's the kind of engagement that we've never had in the history of our organization, and we're really excited about that. We've got people from all over the region to be here to find out what on earth are we talking about, why we invited you, and what's up. The bottom line is we're really excited about an idea, and we want to get you excited too. Some of you have seen some of this information before and are revisiting it for another time, while some of you are seeing it for the very first time. Today, I'm going to spend about an hour with you. I'm going to share some of the problems we all know exist in our region, the problem with our approach to solving those problems and why we aren't making more progress, the new approach we're excited about. We're going to spend some time talking about NASA and how their approach to getting someone to the moon and back on a tight deadline has influenced our work. I'm going to talk to you about the restructuring of our organization for a really big possibility, introduce you to our new website because that's how we want to stay connected with you, talk a bit about our new brand, not for brand's sake, but to really signal our commitment, and really talk about the future and how we'll all be involved in this together. This idea did not pop up overnight. We've been on a journey. About a year and a half ago, our Collaboratory board approved a $2.6 million budget to launch a daring initiative based on ideas and budgets that they had studied extensively for 2 years, putting their skin in the game. And we voted on a new unified identity for our operations, Collaboratory. It's more than a name. A collaboratory is a networked organizational form that emerged from the scientific research community in the 90s. It's a center without walls in which we can work together without regard to physical location. It reduces constraints of distance and time, just like we're doing together right now. It democratizes participation and accelerates solving grand challenge problems. Scientific problem solving now lives in collaboratories, including the rapid discovery of the COVID-19 vaccines. The new name and the notion of Collaboratory are big deals, and I'm excited to share, but they're not the big idea. Here's the big idea. Collaboratory will coordinate the solving of all the region's problems on an 18-year deadline. I want that to soak in for a minute, what this idea means. Look, our board, our team, our supporters know that people will laugh at us about this statement, about this possibility, and we're willing for that to happen because we think it's important. We've also been thinking a lot about deadlines recently. What deadlines really mean for community change or big ideas of any kind, how they drive them forward, how they help us hold each other accountable, how they really make a difference. We need a deadline, something that we're all working towards together. So the next question that might be coming to your mind is how? Well, here's how. We will use a highly integrated approach to coordinate problem solvers, which are you, and provide the bandwidth and resources for that coordination. We've been influenced by a couple of things on this journey. One is a book authored by Dan Pilata, who will be with us later today in the presentation, called The Flat Org Chart. Be sure to request a copy of this from us at info@collaboratory.org. Just give me your name, address, and zip code, and we'll put one in the mail to you. Another influence that we've really been leaning on is NASA, particularly their work in the early days of the space program and their big dream casting, how a person got to the moon and back. You'll hear more about that later. Look, we know there are problems in our region. I'm going to share with you some data points that are really pre-COVID numbers, but really important for us to look at. Kids living 200% below the poverty level nationally sits right at about 44%. In Florida, we're at about 49.5%. Now, this is a Lee County number, 55.9%. Suicide rates, again, pre-COVID, nationally, 13 out of every 100,000 people. In the state, it's at 14, and here in Lee County, 16.9. Low food access. Nationally, we're looking at 22.4%. Statewide, 25.7%, and in Lee County, 38.2%. Depression, nationally, 17.9%, statewide 16.5%, and Lee County 22.1%. And mothers without prenatal care, nationally 22.5%, 28.3% statewide, and 36.6%. These are numbers none of us want to see, and we've all been working hard at these things. Those were Lee County numbers, but I want to say our partners in Charlotte, Collier, Henry, and Glades are experiencing some of these same realities. And we're working closely with organizations like the United Way of Charlotte, the Charlotte Community Foundation, United Way of Collier, the Collier Community Foundation, the United Way of Lee, Henry, and Okeechobee, government agencies in Glades. They're the experts in their communities, and they're sharing these realities and what they're trying to do to solve for them. But there's a problem with our approach to solving these problems, or we would be feeling better about them. First, we always try to pick one when we're solving. We zero in on poverty, or we all gather around exclusively clean water, abuse, racism, illiteracy, and I could have hundreds of buttons up here. But here's the reality. these problems don't exist in the same silos that we're trying to solve them in. Let's just start with economic opportunity. Our organization a couple of years ago really took a deep focus on this, and we quickly realized we can't change economic opportunity if we're not taking a look at what's happening with public school strength. The strength of our public schools is directly connected to this. Public school strength is deeply connected to early childhood learning. If there's not a good early childhood system, they're not entering the public schools strong. This is connected all the way back to maternal health, because if moms aren't getting prenatal care and having healthy pregnancies, then the kids don't enter the early childhood learning at an optimal level. But guess what? Those moms, they can't get to those early OBGYN appointments because public transportation isn't where it needs to be in our region. Now, if we dive down even deeper into just one of these issues, you see even more entanglements. Let's just take public school strength. And I know many of you work on issues like this. Public school strength is connected directly to the funding that the schools get. And much of that is mandated at the state level, and money goes in certain places and not others, and there's nothing we can do about it. So we've got to be able to address voter apathy and increase and ramp up civic engagement. But that takes grassroots organizing with people who many times are working 3 and 4 jobs and so busy with other suffering that they can't even get organized. They don't have the economic opportunities that we need. And guess what? That brings us right back to square one. There are not 100 different problems. There's one large entanglement with 100 entangled symptoms. So we've created some simple connection narratives to help people understand. And let me tell you, that's not usually what we do in philanthropy, right? But we really want to make this as simple as possible and for people to see things that maybe they haven't seen before as connected. Dogs are connected to domestic violence. Many women won't leave horribly abusive relationships because they're afraid to leave their pets behind. Animal shelters are connected to the solution to domestic violence. Check this one out. Buses are connected to babies. If public transportation is inadequate, those pregnant women can't get to their OBGYN visits. So if we don't address public transportation, we can't succeed with maternal health outcomes, but so often we don't bring these groups together. Voting is connected to early childhood education. You can't get funding for the public transportation that leads to healthier pregnancy without voter support. If you're working on early childhood education without addressing transportation, you'll fail. Early childhood's also connected to nutrition. We know that kids who don't eat don't pay attention in school. So if we don't improve early childhood education results without addressing food deserts, we'll fail. Nutrition is connected to police. This is one that people don't always readily think of because guess what? Healthy grocery stores, they don't want to locate in high crime neighborhoods. You can't address food deserts in our neighborhoods and poor nutrition without working on crime and policing. Here's one we've really become aware of over the last year. Suicide rates are connected to broadband. Isolation is huge. Lack of broadband connection leads to this isolation. If mental health organizations aren't working directly with internet providers, we can't improve mental health outcomes. And broadband is also connected to poverty because internet providers tend to put the latest technology in the poor neighborhoods last. So if we're trying to improve internet access without addressing poverty, we'll be in trouble. Poverty is connected to tourism, and this one hits close to home for us because if we're not careful, a narrow focus on bringing in tourism can create more low-paying service jobs. And if you're trying to address poverty in neighborhoods while under the short-term pressure to boost tourism, you'll increase poverty. So we want to get these connections out far and wide. We want people to identify with issues they care about and see how they're linked to others. So we're going to use billboards, ads, and posters like these to get this word out and share these connections with the public. You'll see them everywhere. We'll pick an issue and show the connectivity. You can't solve early childhood education without solving broken families. You can't solve broken families without solving incarceration. You can't solve incarceration without fixing the drug policy. You can't fix a drug policy without voting and civic engagement. You can't increase civic engagement and voting without literacy. And you can't improve literacy without solving early childhood education. It's all connected. We're all connected. Collaboratory, everyone. We'll pick many different issues and show this connectivity, whether it's racism, literacy. You'll see these everywhere. The second issue we're facing is we're suboptimally organized, to put it mildly. You know, in most companies and even in most nonprofits, we have a hierarchy, and we have it because it works. It's how people stay connected. It's how people communicate. It's how they know what one department is doing and how it's connected to another one. It works. But in our communities, and I mean all of them, not just Southwest Florida, we don't have this same kind of structure. We have got a lot of organizations doing incredible work. We've got health systems working on health outcomes. Community foundations, like the ones I mentioned earlier, are in their communities, leading ideas, doing important work, collecting data, United Ways, there for their community. Dozens of large nonprofits, hundreds, I'd say thousands of smaller ones, all working together and doing their best to collaborate. We've got police and court systems doing programs. We've got mission committees at churches, governments with their programs, whether it's local, state, or federal. More now than ever, we've got individual and leaders and activists who are willing to step into this space and just wish they knew what other people were doing as well. Chambers of commerce who are connected to business and economic development, corporations who are dedicated to corporate social responsibility, 5 school districts in our region, all trying to make the community a better place for kids, economic development initiatives driving our economies, universities and colleges with research and data gathering project, national nonprofits who have a presence here, and particularly collaboration initiatives. There are so many collaborations in our community that are gathering people together. My comments here aren't to diminish the existing work, but just for us to all say, how could it be bigger? The scale that we need. Our own collective impact initiative at Collaboratory, the Future Makers Coalition, has hundreds of partners, but we've got to expand that and do more. We need greater connectivity across this flat organizational chart. See, the flat org chart isn't describing the solution, it's describing the problem. There's nothing and no one coordinating all of this. So I want to make a really firm point there that I'm not talking about someone controlling it and calling the shots. I'm talking about somebody willing to connect all of these things that are already happening in our community to help us all. We also don't have a collective regional common goal, and worse yet, no regional goal at all that binds us all together. I mentioned earlier, it's an 18-year conversation, but it's not turnover proof. We've got to make sure that we build something that even when people who are in leadership positions turn over, that we don't lose all the great momentum and work that we do. So take a look at this. Most law enforcement leaders, tenure is about 3 years. Healthcare leaders, about 5.5. University and college presidents, 6. And nonprofit leaders, 6. So when they leave, they take information, collaborations they built, and they go away. We've got to make this turnover proof. And here's a huge factor, time. Nobody has any time. You all are working so hard at what you do already. Nobody has any time or any plan or any budget or any hope for even making the time for this coordinating effort. Again, we're not alone. This is every community in America. This is why people aren't seeing the change they really want. Every city, every county, and every region is experiencing this. All right, so what do we need to do about it? We have got to commit to a powerful, holistic, regional goal. Make it common. Coordinate the action that's happening across all of these organizations and efforts. We got to share meaningful data and meaningful information that people can access and understand. We've got to make it turnover proof. And I think number 6 here is really key. We've got to create trust, navigate egos and competition that just seem to keep breaking us down before we ever get a really good start. And we've got to fund bandwidth for coordinating that we seem to think we can ignore. Now, I know that all of these things are going to take all of us doing it together. So I wanted to provide today a little bit of an example. And I'm really excited to introduce you to Dan Pilata today. And he's going to speak a little bit more about that NASA connection I mentioned earlier. So I want to be sure that I'm setting your brains in the right framework for what he's going to share today. We know we're not NASA, and we know the technical challenges of getting a person to the moon and back are not exactly like community change making. But NASA has a great model for how they coordinate and experiment with things and are willing to fail. I want you, when you're listening to Dan talk to us about this NASA connection, to really think about your own work in the community and how this model can influence community change making. Now, Dan is an author, a TED speaker, a humanitarian activist, and an entrepreneur. And I'm really happy to have him here with us today to share a little bit about this NASA connection. Dan?
Thank you, Sarah. Hello, everybody. It's really great to be with you today. So excited by the number of people that have joined us today. So I want to talk about NASA.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
So why NASA? Because of the subject of coordination. You've heard Sarah now hammer away at the subject of bandwidth and coordination. And NASA is probably the most powerful example we have of a massive coordination effort aimed at achieving something impossible. And what we're trying to do here, many would say, is impossible. Solve all of the social problems, all of the problems in Southwest Florida on an 18-year deadline. So if you're going to try something impossible, it's really important to understand how impossible things get achieved, right? In social work, community work, we tend to have subject matter expertise in education, in hunger, in literacy, in race relations, and all the things that we really care about. What we don't have subject matter expertise in, how do insanely impossible things get accomplished? So that's why we want to talk about NASA, because of the massive coordinating effort that it was. Now, when you think about Apollo, when you think about the space program, you think about rockets, right? You know, the massive Saturn V rocket. You think about the roar of the launch, the, massive orange plume of flame coming out of the rocket. You think about footsteps on the moon. You don't think about offices and desks and typewriters. You don't think about all the back office NASA stuff, right? All the coordination stuff. There aren't pictures of that in Life magazine. And when you think about NASA, for those of you young enough to remember, you think, well, spaceships, right? Equipment. You think NASA, we all think NASA built things. Here's the thing, NASA actually didn't build things. NASA coordinated the people who were building things. NASA coordinated and connected, coordinated and connected. It's behind the scenes, coordinating and connecting at a massive level, all of the massive spaceship builders and spacesuit builders and space capsule builders that are actually doing all the work. And in community organizing and social change, we don't really have anything like that. We have all the people out there doing all this work, but we don't have a NASA helping to coordinate everything. So at the peak of the Apollo program in the 1960s, there were 20,000 companies, universities, and institutions involved. 20,000. Can you imagine if that was uncoordinated, if they didn't know what one another were doing? At the peak of the Apollo program in the 60s, there were 400,000 full-time employees. And NASA had 36,000 full-time employees just dedicated to coordination. So if you take 36,000 people coordinating against 400,000 people working, you have a ratio of 1 to 10 in terms of coordinators as against workers. What do we have in social change? Well, I think we would all agree that we pretty much have a ratio of 0 to 10, or maybe we have a ratio of 0.0001 to 10. And then we wonder legitimately, why aren't big things getting done? Big things aren't getting done because you got all of these entities that Sarah showed you along this really flat org chart, and we don't have any resources, bandwidth, budget for coordinating people to help this all come together. You know, sure, we do collaboration breakfasts, right? Like once a month, we get together with 10 other nonprofits and, you know, we coordinate. Imagine trying to get to the moon by, you know, the heads of the big space companies having breakfast once a month. So we need to think on an entirely different level about what coordination is required to achieve something impossible like this. So that's why we're talking about NASA today. So let's take a simple example, just 6 companies, right? I told you there were 200,000 companies. Let's just look at 6 of them. So North American Aviation built the command module that the 3 astronauts lifted off in. Northrop Grumman built the funny-looking lunar module. Playtex ILC Dover designed and fabricated and manufactured the spacesuits. A company called Hamilton Standard developed the life support packs that the astronauts wore on their backs. Boeing developed and designed and engineered and built the Saturn V rocket, and Ingalls Iron Works actually built the launch pad. Now, it's really important that they all had common mission parameters, right? Like that they all know, hey, we're going to the moon. We are not going to Pluto. We are not going to the sun. We are not going to Jupiter. We're going to the moon. Really important to know that. We don't know that so much in social work. Some people are going to the moon. Some people are going to Jupiter. Some people are going to Saturn. We're going by 1969, so we got to all get on that same timeline. We don't know that in social work. We tend not to have deadlines. So some people are trying to get there whenever. Some people are trying to get there next year. Some people are trying to get there in 5 years. And they needed to give everybody common specifications. Hey, here's how big this has to be and how big that has to be. And here's how all the wiring is connected together. So let's look at that. So you have Hamilton Standard building the life support pack, and the life support pack is rectangular, right? Well, it's really important for Playtex ILC Dover that's making the spacesuit to know the life support back is rectangular and it rises up above the astronauts' helmets. It can't have the helmet go back too far. And the harness on the suit has to be for a rectangular backpack, not for a round backpack. And it's really important for Northrop Grumman, which is building the lunar module, to know, hey, that backpack is rectangular. It isn't round. So we need to build a rectangular, a square door for the lunar module, because if we build a round door, astronauts wearing a rectangular backpack aren't going to be able to get out of the lunar module. And it's really important for Northrop Grumman that's building the lunar module to be connected to North American Aviation, which is building the command module, because those two vehicles need to dock multiple times in space. So they both need to know within, nanometers, what is the diameter of the docking rings and how many docking pins are there, so that these two things can couple and seal perfectly in the vacuum of space. And both of these companies need to be talking to Boeing or getting information about Boeing to know, hey, how much room do we have to fit our vehicles on the top of the Saturn V? And what are the weight restrictions that Boeing is providing us so that this thing will actually be able to lift off? And then Ingalls Iron Works needs to be coordinated with Boeing to know, hey, how tall is this Saturn V rocket? And where do we need to put the bridges? And where's the command module so that we can build that bridge? And what umbilical cords are required for oxygen and fuel and vaping and everything else? So imagine if you take this away. Imagine if you take those 36,000 employees at NASA away and you just tell everybody, oh, I don't know where we're going. We don't know when we're going to get there. But hey, have at it. Use all your best intentions, do really hard work, but we're not going to really coordinate everything. And that's how we're trying to do things in social change. Again, not to diminish the collaborations that are happening, but the collaborations that are happening are so much smaller than the massive collaborations we actually need to really solve problems on an 18-year deadline. So in addition to that, NASA was highly experimental. It was really imaginative. There was a learn as we go ethos. There was a very high tolerance for the unknown. There was a very high tolerance for failure, right? There were a lot of mistakes made before we actually got to the moon. It was really messy. And we have to have a tolerance for this work that we're doing to be really messy. There's going to be failure. There's going to be confusion. A lot of things are going to go wrong. And that's as it should be when you're trying something impossible. So for example, originally the spacesuit was going to be hard shell. They invested years and millions of dollars in a hard shell suit, only to find once they recruited the astronauts that the astronauts wanted and needed a flexible fabric suit. So then they spent years and millions of dollars developing the actual suit that went to the moon. Originally, they were going to land the space capsule with a glider, but it proved too heavy and it would crash every time. So they said, well, let's try retro rockets. Every time they try retro rockets, the command module disintegrated. So that's how we ended up with these beautiful orange and white parachutes and splashdown methodology for landing. The lunar module that landed on the moon, you couldn't fly that on the Earth, which meant you couldn't test it. So they built this crazy contraption that you're looking at right now, which was wildly unstable, to give Neil Armstrong and the other commanders of the mission a chance to feel what it might be like to land on the moon. Well, it didn't work very well. And Neil Armstrong was almost killed a month before Apollo 11 lifted off when this thing crashed into the ground. And with just seconds to go before it crashed, he fired his ejection seat, and that's Neil Armstrong at the top of that plume of flame you see there, watching this lunar module trainer explode. They didn't know whether they were going to go with one giant rocket and lift it off from the Earth and land it on the moon. That's how they were originally thinking about it. But then they thought, well, how are you going to get the astronauts down off of this giant rocket when they're on the moon? And how are you going to get them back up into it? And how are they going to land on the moon while they're lying on their backs? And so they decided on this idea of a ferry vehicle called the lunar module. And at first, the lunar module was really bulbous and it was really heavy and it had these big glass windows. And they decided that's way too heavy. We don't need all of that. Let's come up with a function over form vehicle. We're in the vacuum of space already. And they designed this spidery looking crazy lunar module, which is eventually what landed on the moon. The astronauts died hundreds and hundreds of times in simulations. They had big simulators that they were in every day to practice this. What kind of simulations do we have for creating social change? And astronauts actually died. 3 astronauts died on the launch pad of Apollo 1 when there was a fire in the cabin. So there was a huge, huge tolerance for mistakes and for failure and for this not being perfect, but for this being quite messy with the Apollo program.
So what do we have to do as an organization to make all of that a reality, to become that NASA-like coordinating entity? Well, currently, we're a small business giving away $6 to $7 million annually. Collaboratory has to transform into a sophisticated, convening, and coordinating apparatus. The new structure must explain this to people over and over again. One time isn't enough, and it has to be ongoing and widespread. We've got to conduct a lot of brainstorming. And I don't mean like what Dan mentioned, a breakfast once in a while with some Post-it notes, but brainstorming constantly in every corner of every neighborhood, really mining the best ideas. We've got to find a way to catalog suffering, because this is what this is really all about. How will we end suffering in our region and catalog the entanglements that are causing it? We've got to share meaningful data that can be used, and we have got to coordinate all the action that you all are already activating. Now, many of you have interacted with us in the past with our existing operating structure, and all of these things are going to remain as part of our work. Grant making, sustainability, economic, social, and environmental, scholarship and equity work, and our collective impact project, Future Makers and Talent Hub. But they're going to be incorporated into a new operating structure that will include finance and development. This will be led by a chief collaboration officer who will begin to integrate an explanation lead, a brainstorming lead, an entanglements lead, and a nurturing lead with the existing work that we're doing. So it'll be working in concert with each other. Our new website mirrors this structure exactly, and you can find it at collaboratory.org. We created this new website by combining two of our previous websites. We had one for the Southwest Florida Community Foundation and another one for Collaboratory, which was our physical and virtual space. So we scrubbed those down, made them simple, and combined them. We made something that's really easy to understand, really usable, really focused, really serious, really inspiring, and really respectful to the community. And here's what you find when you come to collaboratory.org. Welcome to the greatest community problem-solving initiative in American history. You can take it with you on your tablet or your mobile device, because this is how we want to stay continually connected to you. This is about us connecting. Here's what you see when you come to the homepage, and here's what it says. You can see right off the bat that we've changed our name from the Southwest Florida Community Foundation to Collaboratory. But we're up to something much bigger than a name change. We're actually putting our name on the line for the change we seek to achieve. It's audacious. We're committed to bringing Southwest Florida together to solve all of our major social problems on an 18-year deadline. You read that correctly, all of them in 18 years, not alone, but with everyone, all ages, neighborhoods, beliefs, colors, and imaginations. And we're committed to building the infrastructure required to coordinate all of this at the scale and in the way that NASA coordinated hundreds of thousands of people to get people to the moon in 9 years. It will be the greatest problem-solving initiative in American history. It's divided up by departments that match that organizational structure: the Givers and Giving Department, Explanation, Entanglements, Brainstorming, Nurturing, and more. Let's start with the Givers and Giving Department. Why that department? Because we need resources large enough to raise the resources we need for the bandwidth that's large enough to solve the problems we intend to solve. When you come to that section, here's what you'll see, and here's what it says. You can join other visionaries in the community in making a big philanthropic bet on this initiative, either with a traditional charitable gift or as a debt in the form of an innovation plan. We can show you exactly how your gift will contribute, regardless of the giving level. Now, on to the explanation department, and I'm excited for one of our newest team members at Collaboratory to join me, John Romine. No, I'm not. That's my department. I'm so excited to introduce new people that I just want to jump ahead. Could you introduce this section? No, I have to do this. This is why we need an explanation department, right? The explanation department is all about the explaining, right? Why do we need it? Because it's important that people know what we do and they understand what we are and we are not doing. And a website paragraph just won't do it. We need sessions. Here's what you'll find, not John Romine, but me leading this department. And here's what it says. Solve every problem in our region in 18 years. Are you crazy? Collaboratory? What even is that? To answer the first question, yes, we're crazy. As Steve Jobs says, the people who are crazy enough to change the world are the ones who do. As for the second question, explaining Collaboratory in detail takes more than a paragraph on a web page. So each month, we run incredible explanation sessions that bring the whole idea to life and wonderful people together. They last about 2 hours, and you can sign up for the next cohort by sending your information to me over here to the right. On the website, you'll find places that you can sign up immediately for a session, and later we'll talk about how you can plan your own explanation session. Again, you can request a complimentary copy via info@collaboratory.org for deeper explanations into this idea. Just send me an email. Now I get to introduce John Romine. Hi, John.
Hi, Sarah.
I'm glad this was the right time to introduce you. So John's going to be leading our entanglements department, and I'll let him share a little bit about that.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm so excited to be here and never been more excited about living in Southwest Florida. And I'm glad you're as excited that you pre-introduced me as well. So thank you. So why entanglements? Because it's important to break us out of our habit of looking at everything in silos. So this is what you'll see when you come to the entanglements department on our website. And this is what it says. For years, we've tried to solve social problems in silos as if they were disconnected from one another. There's the hunger cause, the poverty cause, the literacy cause, the social justice cause, the mental health cause, and on and on and on. Often, even when people think big, they think big inside the prison of a system of silos. They ask, which of these problems should we pick to dream about solving? But what if it doesn't work that way? What if your efforts to solve for maternal health end up being undermined because you didn't include transportation? What if it's impossible to solve the problems one at a time because they're all connected? What if it's actually easier to address them all at the same time, holistically recognizing that they are all connected, that they are all one big ecosystem of problems? The entanglements department is all about understanding the tangled webs that connect all of the problems we want to solve, recognizing that solving all of them together is the only way we'll ever solve any of them. And I'm looking forward to connecting with all of you. Sarah shared a few of the entanglements earlier, and we wanted to revisit them to let you know that these live on the website under the entanglements department, not in the form of white papers or big reports, but in simple explanations so you can visit them anytime and help solve all of these problems across our region in the next 18 years.
Thanks, John. All right, on to the brainstorming department. And you'll see that nobody's stepping in here. Why do we need a brainstorming department? Because it's not about a master plan from us or from on high. It's about blue sky, out of the box, wild, never thought of it before, imagining together. Here's the brainstorming department on our website, and this is what it says. Poverty, education, loneliness, depression, climate change, hate in all its forms. These entrenched problems are all connected. Only by working together can we defeat them. We're committed to solving all of them in 18 years, but we need big ideas and boots on the ground. So the first phase of this effort is all about brainstorming, creativity, innovation, wild imagination, and crazy conjuring, coming from every corner of the community. How can we look at problems and answers anew? Maybe there's a way no one's thinking about. Maybe we can combine things in an ingenious way no one's even ever considered before. There are no wrong answers, and we're not defined by any boxes. We're hiring for a brainstorming lead. Know someone that could be great? Is it you? If so, email us after the presentation at jobs@collaboratory.org, and soon you might be standing right here in Collaboratory. Now on to the nurturing department. I'm really excited to introduce our new nurturing lead, Jason
Thank you.
Teeters.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for allowing me to make an impact in our community. And thank you for all that are watching via Zoom. So the nurturing department, why the nurturing department? Because the ego, competition, and distrust that often undermine collaboration are technical challenges that can be worked and overcome just like gravity. Here's what it looks like on the website, and here's what it says. The first obstacles that come to mind when the subject of collaboration is raised are turf, egos, conflict, competition, and distrust, even among nonprofits, maybe especially among nonprofits. These obstacles are usually seen as fatal, and collaborative initiatives usually don't even get off the ground because of them. We start from a very cynical position. But what if, instead of bemoaning these things or wishing they didn't exist, or worse, being Pollyanna and pretending they don't exist, we expect them and prepare for them in the same way the Apollo spacecraft expected and prepared for the heat of reentry? What if we build a core competency in conflict resolution together? Hey, more than that, what if we build a core competency in nurturing trust and respect and admiration, maybe even love, among all of the partners that will be involved in this effort? That's the role of the nurturing department. It will become a laboratory for learning how to overcome the psychological, emotional, and technical challenges to successful collaboration. And it will apply what it learns in real time. We regard it as every bit as important as the finance operation or the brainstorming, giving and explanation departments. And excited to be here.
Thanks
Thank
so
you,
much,
Sarah.
Jason. Now I'm really excited to introduce a team member that's been with the Collaboratory for a number of years. She's currently the scholarship lead, Milena Moat. Milena, will you join me?
Hi, Sarah.
It's great to have you here. And look, Milena just reached a huge milestone in our organization's history. We just surpassed the $1 million mark in scholarships distributed under your leadership, with a lot of help from the community. So I'm excited for you to walk everybody through this section of the website.
Thank you, Sarah. It's super exciting. I'm a little giddy. So, so everything that we are doing now is informed by everything that we have done in the past as a Southwest Florida Community Foundation. And everything that we've done in the past is being integrated into our new work as we all work together, looking through the lens of Collaboratory to solve our community's problems. So everything that you found on our old website can be located under the More tab on our new website. So if you're looking for an event at Collaboratory, you can find it on our event calendar. You want to check out our Collaboratory team, our governing team and founders, you can find those links under the More tab as well. Our causes, information about our grants and grant cycles, our guiding principles, a link to our Future Makers website, as well as information on our scholarships program is all found under the More tab. Help for your nonprofit? Click the More tab. Want to check out some photos of Collaboratory? Want to buy some cool Collaboratory swag? Want to look at our financials and investments, our sitemap? All of these can be found on the More tab of our collaboratory.org website. And sustainability is woven through each and every one of these. Now I'm going to hand it off to my teammate, Kim Williams, who just celebrated her 10-year work anniversary as a team member of Collaboratory. And she will answer the question that's on the top of all of your minds right now. What about the building? Kim?
Oh, I'm so excited to welcome you, Kim. You and I've been here together for a decade.
We sure have. Lots of changes in that time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Milena. So I lead systems, sites, and experience here at Collaboratory, and we are so excited to welcome you back to the space. We are open for meetings and aligned events, building tours again, as well as we have some co-working space available. Collaboratory has always represented both the physical and virtual space for the thinkers, dreamers, and planners. We're ready to connect you not only in the physical, but also through Florida Lambda Rail in the virtual. Collaboratory is here to support all of us working together to solve all of our region's social issues in the next 18 years. Visit our building page, And to learn more, and hit the reserve space button to submit a request.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks, Kim. I have a feeling that button's going to start blowing up here. People are anxious to get back. So there it is. There's our website. We want you to visit it often, stay connected with us, stay engaged with all of these team members that were here today, but also the other team members that are here with us doing this work. Now I want to shift a little bit to our brand. Now, a lot of times organizations will make a big announcement about their brand, and that's exciting, but that's not what this is about. But it does need our attention. It does need to be noted because it shows our commitment. We switched our brand and came under one entity because we had two, one for the Southwest Florida Community Foundation, and then one for our physical and virtual space. And with this work, we wanted to combine those into one identity, Collaboratory. You'll notice that the circle is really the focal point because we think the circle represents so much about community. You'll see it always changing, always evolving. We can use all kinds of different effects on it depending on what's going on in any given day. It will change just like our community does on a daily basis. It can be aspirational with the moon and the sky and the sea. It can represent things that we're working on together, whether it's recycling or energy. It'll allow us to tell a story right in that circle, whether it's an event or storytelling with nonprofits. We'll be able to really connect to people who are focused on animals or entrepreneurs, whatever the passion point is. This default mode really is all the colors of the rainbow representing all of you. And who doesn't love to fly a flag? If you come to our physical space here on MLK, you're going to see a brand that means we're serious. This is now the headquarters for the greatest problem-solving initiative in American history, and you can take it with you. You see, this isn't just a new name, it's a commitment. Look, we could have launched this on an existing web page as a small little pilot project or a new initiative, kind of tiptoeing in to see what everybody would think, to see if people would come along. But we didn't do that. It's too important because we discovered how many people are suffering and what we thought as an organization we could play a role in ending that suffering. Some of you received this mailer. If you didn't, I'll be happy to get you one. But we made this big because this commitment is big. If you didn't get one yet, on one side it just said, "This is big," because it is. And it was an important announcement from the Southwest Florida Community Foundation. When you opened up the envelope, you saw that announcement, and we claim it as the most important announcement we've ever made, not for us, but for the community. We explained a little bit. It mirrors much of what you see on that front page of the website. And on the back of the mailer, actually 150 people from across the region who had seen the idea ahead of time signed up to say, "I'm excited." And that gave us something to work on together. Now, the first question I get after I reveal the big idea is, how? How will we do this? And you know, I really want to answer all the questions. I feel like I want to do that, but I know that's not what we're doing here. I imagine kind of JFK, and more so the NASA team, after JFK made his proclamation about getting a person to the moon and back in a decade. And I wondered if anybody came up to them right after the speech or the first few months at NASA and said, "Okay, how are we going to do this?" Well, I'll tell you, if they had known how to do it, they would have done it. We're on an amazing adventure together. We're trying something that no one's done before. It took everybody at NASA and all their subcontractors and people all across the nation getting behind it. The pivotal word here is we. How will we do this? Not how will Collaboratory do this. We're going to play a role that allows us to do this thing together. And we want you to come on this adventure for us. Another question that I get pretty often is, so what does this mean for me or my organization? And what I really want to stress here is, I want you to see this as a resource for what your dream is, for what you're already working on. Dan mentioned it, our team mentioned it today. So much good work is going on, but we need it to be at a larger scale. We want those numbers to go in a different direction. What we're willing to do here, our board and our team, is just create a space for it and a mandate. And then finally, how will this help me? I kind of go back to JFK again, I think, when he gave his inaugural speech, when he said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. So ask not what Collaboratory you can do for you, but ask what you can do for your community with this resource behind you. I think we're going to discover it together, just like people who had never run a 4-minute mile or had never found a cure for a disease or a fossil. What can you do next? I'm really hoping that you'll stay engaged with us. We need to have more of these explanation sessions. If you're willing to host an explanation session with 8 to 10 of your friends, email me at host@collaboratory.org and we'll get back to you. We'll host the Zoom, we'll welcome you here to the headquarters, or we'll come to you. We'll come to a break room. We'll come to your place of business. Wherever you want to gather to get the word out about this, we're here for you. Additionally, who do you know who would love to invest in this kind of coordinating effort? We need the resources. So reach out to me at info@collaboratory.com and I'll be really happy to get back to you. But make sure it's collaboratory.org to reach out to me, info@collaboratory.org. Well, this is one of my favorite questions to consider because I like to imagine things. What's this look like a year from now? Well, let's just start with Collabraday to begin with. It won't be virtual. We won't be not interacting with each other as we are now. We'll be together. We plan to make Collabraday an annual event. I imagine this building filled with people, the region filled with people, music, engaging with each other, asking each other questions, sharing how this first year is gone. What have we discovered from each other and where do we want to go next? I can't wait for a year from now, but I'm also equally engaged in each day that takes us to get there.
Remember to get your copy of the flat org chart.
And tell us about anyone who might be great to lead the brainstorming.
And don't forget to sign up to host an explanation session.
See, you got in on the explanation side of things. I wasn't that far off. Thank you, everyone. It was great to be with you. I see some of you have your hands up because of the large crowd and the live stream on Facebook. We couldn't interact today, but please just reach out to us via the website. We'll be happy to answer all of your questions. We can't wait to talk to you. Bye, everyone.